this press conference this morning is to show you that President Mahama does not have the political will to fight corruption, and also to give you some new evidence that corruption in the NDC government under John Mahama is systemic. It's a party-wide industry, and it is deliberate, it is calculated, and that also reinforces the view that President Mahama has not got a political will to fight corruption. Now, why do we say that President Mahama hasn't got a political will to fight corruption? In 2008, precisely on Saturday, 29th November 2008, President Mahama told the country, and I'm quoting the reports, this is a report on GNA, Ghana News Agency, in the Central Region, November 29, 2008. And the story is that Mr. Mahama said the fight against corruption required a strong political will and commitment of leadership, and that no legislation could help to end corruption without official commitment to deal with the problem. He reiterated the commitment of the NDC to run a corrupt-free and transparent government to restore public confidence in the affairs of states. In this direction, he said an NDC government would change the Serious Fraud Office into an independent commission and also empower the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice to initiate and investigate issues of corruption on its own without complaints from members of the public. Now, two things to note in this report by the GNA, that President Mahama told the country that the fight against corruption, the key thing that you need is the political leadership, the political commitment, and that no law would be adequate in fighting corruption without the political leadership. And he said that if the NDC came into office, one, they would change the Serious Fraud Office into an independent commission. They would also empower SHRAG to initiate and investigate issues on corruption on its own without complaints from members of the public. Now, these commitments that President Mahama, then running mate, made in 2008 about the serious fraud, it hasn't happened. About the SHRAG, it hasn't happened. And these are just pieces of legislation, just amending the laws. In 8 years, it has not happened. Clearly, the political commitment has not been present. Also, in 2008, this is also, this was during the launch of the NDC manifesto. And this is a report captured in the Daily Graphic of 6 October 2008. And in this report, and I'm reading the report verbatim, it says, Mr. Mahama, whose speech was interspersed with chants of Obama from the crowd, described corruption as one of the main constraints on the nation's development, and said as part of the moves to fight corruption, the NDC would establish the Office of Independent Fraud Investigator, who would be independent of the Attorney General's Office and the Ministry of Justice, but with powers to initiate prosecution on its own. Then he repeated that the party would amend the Constitution to review the authority of SHRAG for them to be able to initiate investigations on their own and so on. So you have three major commitments made by then running mate Mahama in 2008 to revamp SHRAG to make it more efficient in fighting corruption. It's never happened. To revamp the Serious Fraud Office to make it more efficient in fighting corruption, it never happened. And he said he would set up the Office of the Independent Fraud Investigator, who will be independent of the Attorney General's Office and who will be able to initiate prosecution. It also has never happened in 8 years. So obviously, the political commitment to fight corruption is not there. in President Mahama's government. Now, beyond the political commitment, the examples of corruption abound. Indeed, no government in the Fourth Republic has been so beset with corruption as we have had in the NDC government from 2009 to today. And corruption is now so commonplace that Ghanaians almost have become desensitized to stories about corruption. I mean, we all know of the issues regarding SADA, where the government thought that giving the private sector monies to rear guinea fowl was going to be an antidote to corruption. And then also putting up a forest was also going to solve poverty in the north. In the event, nearly $30 million was pumped into this guinea fowl rearing and into this afforestation. To date, we have not seen any guinea fowl, and we have not seen any forest, and almost $30 million pumped into it. We haven't seen a pesewa retrieved for the taxpayer. So, and you wonder how that could happen, but that's exactly what happened. Take JIDA, where a vehicle that had been set up to begin to provide young people with jobs. That vehicle, in 2009, was renamed JIDA and was turned into a vehicle for massive looting of taxpayers' monies. And we all know the stories, JIDA, where one company will be given a contract to train 20,000 people in tailoring, and then they'll be paid all the money up front. No competitive bidding, they paid all the money to them, and then the company will end up training maybe 2,000. They will end up training 2,000, and the rest of the money is all pocketed. And then after finishing that, they will give that same company another contract to train another group of people, 15,000, and they'll pay all the money up front. I mean, it's almost like you are reading some Anansi stories, but these are the things that happen. Look at Smarties, for example, where they decided that putting President Mahama's photograph on buses was in the interest of the nation. And so they then proceeded to select one company, give the company the contracts, the company finishes the job, the company is paid, and after all of that, they then ask the company to bring a quotation. Now, the company, the decision is taken, the company is selected, the work is done, payment is made, and after all of that, then when it became a matter of public interest, they then went back to ask the company for a quotation. If you are not in Ghana and you hear this, you think it's somebody's imagination, but this is real. Woyome is another instance, Waterville another instance where there's clear collusion and connivance to steal taxpayers' monies, all under the President Mahama's watch. And this is also a clear example that President Mahama has not got a political will to fight corruption. And the things that he himself said he would do in 2008, he said that what you need to fight corruption is political will and commitment, and not the laws. That's what he himself said. So if there's massive corruption today, it is due to the lack of political will. That's what he himself told us, and I've shown you where he said those things. And he said he would change SRAG, he said he would change SFO, he said he would set up the office of the independent prosecutor, and all of it have come to nothing. So the political will is not there, and that is why you have all of this SADA and JIDA and Smarties and Woyome and Waterville and all of them. Now, we'd like to discuss with you the effects of corruption on our national development. Look, the Woyome money alone was $35 million in 2010 when it was paid. The 51 million Ghana cedis at that time was worth $35 million. Now, you take $35 million of taxpayers' money and give it to one man. Then you go and borrow the same amount of money from India to put up a factory. You see, the corruption is so blatant, it's so in your face. You take the money that you have, taxpayers' money, and you give it to one man, say some judgment debt. And then when you finish, you go and borrow the same amount from India to put up a factory. Now, take the 100 million JIDA that has been wasted. What it means is that JIDA money that was wasted could have built 3 factories the size of Commander. Commander is 35 million, so 100 million could easily have built 3 more factories the size of Commander. Now, the president himself told us that Commander will provide 7,000 jobs, isn't it? So that $100 million wasted on JIDA could have provided at least 21,000 jobs. You see the effect of corruption on national development. So when you go and take that money and pay it in JIDA, how can you build a factory to provide the jobs for young people? So you can see a direct correlation between unemployment and corruption. Very, very clear. Now you take, how can you pay nurses training allowance, for example, when you've put nearly 30 million in SADA? Why are you going to get money to pay nurses allowance? Now when you you throw away nearly $30 million in SADA, and then you say you can't find money to pay nurses training, the obvious conclusion is that it's the monies that you are using to pay SADA and so on. You can't pay health insurance. And as we speak, providers are owed about 9 months health insurance. And Ghanaians with the health insurance are not getting treatment because government is not paying the hospitals. Now, you can't get money to pay the hospitals for health services given to Ghanaians. And yet you're able to find money to pay for President Mahama's photograph on buses. And this photograph on buses, as we all saw from the investigation, the payment that was done was more than 100%. Normally, you hear of 10%. There is some people have added 10%. Smarties alone, over 100 million, 100%. The actual monies that should have been paid, as you all know, was what, 1.7 million. They ended up paying how much? 3.5 million. So how much extra was paid? 1.9 million, which is more than the 1.7 million that was needed. More than 100% put on it. And when they said, the Ghanaians said, where is the result of the investigation that was done? Government said, we won't give it to you. People have to go to court before, if you're a government of transparency and accountability. People have to go to court before you publish reports on corruption. Now, what all of us should know is that all of these cases, like SADA, like JIDA, and all of the other ones, these are what we know. Those that we don't know, plenty, but we don't know. I mean, these are the ones that by God's grace and by the hard work of some individuals have come to light. But there are several more that we don't know. So you can imagine the negative effect of corruption on our national development. That's why we can't pay capitation grants. And so students don't have chalk in their schools. That's why we can't pay feeding grants. So when they open schools, schools in the north cannot open because feeding grants have not been paid. That's why we cannot pay feeding subsidy. So instead of our students staying for 3 months, they stay for 1.5 months because feeding subsidy has not been paid. That's why we can't pay health insurance. All of this because of corruption. Now, we would show you that in the NDC, corruption is systematic. It is not maybe some one minister or one official engaging themselves in wrongdoing. It cuts across the entire system of the NDC. The president himself, you know what we say, they say fish rots from the top, from the head, isn't it? The president himself, 2 major issues of corruption against him. One is the Ford bribe, the Ford car bribe. We have been told that it wasn't a bribe because the president did not benefit from it. that he turned the gift over to the state. But nobody has up to today been able to tell Ghanaians how a gift, a Ford car gift, that was supposed to have been turned over to the state on 2nd November 2012. On 2nd November 2012, the vehicle was turned over to the state. That's what we have been told. And so it became state property. And of course, it was then turned into an armored car for the protection of the president. Now, this turning over to the state was supposed to have happened on 2nd November 2012. How come that on 13 February 2013, that same vehicle that had been given to the state 3 months earlier and be configured into an armored car, that same vehicle on 13 February 2013 was taken to Tema Port, declared as a second-hand car, and duty of 23,000 Ghana cedis paid on it? How is that possible? And up to today, the president has not answered that question. Shrag has not answered that question. If it wasn't, the president did not benefit, who went and registered that car and paid duty at Tema Port? Who? Because the state doesn't pay duty. The state doesn't declare its vehicles for duty purposes at Tema Port. So if it was turned over to the state on 2nd November 2012, 3 months later on 13 February, who went and registered it as a second-hand car at Tema Port and actually paid duty of 23,000? The second matter of the president himself engaging in bribery is the Bugri Nabu matter. We've heard the Minister for Communications admit last Friday that indeed the president was in the house of his brother on the night that Bugri Nabu claimed the bribe was offered to him. So you have a clear case of the president himself being present when citizens are being bribed to do one thing or the other. And this is at the level of the president. Now, we would also present you some evidence to show that from the president, the whole corruption thing is systemic across the NDC. And we will do this by showing you the Woyome payments to show you how it cuts across the party and it cuts across key members of the government. Now, Mr. Woyome had been meticulous in keeping records of those that he gave money to. With some of the payments, and we have all of them here, we'll share them with you. He made the recipients write in their own words the receipt, the amount received, when it was received, and all of that. He got them to do that. Even when he gave a cash check, he made sure that he kept a record of the payments in a separate book. And beyond that, he will write the name of the beneficiary, and where necessary, he writes the purpose of the cash on the check counterfoil. You all know the check counterfoil, the stop, when you write the check, that little thing where you write the narration. He was very meticulous in keeping records of the payments that he made. And like I said, we have some of them, and we'll give all of them to you. Now, they include a 1 million Ghana cedi payment to the NDC party on 15th February 2011. They include a 75,000 Ghana cedi payment to Professor Awuno on 28th June 2011. They include 60,000 Ghana cedi payment to Mr. Juwelaka on 16th of June 2011. They include a 20,000 Ghana cedi payment to General Mosquito on 2nd September 2011. They include a 60,000 Ghana cedi payment to one Mr. Steve Poggi, who I understand was the head of the Agricultural Development Bank at that time. They include 8,000 Ghana cedi payment to one Suhini of Radio Gold. They include 2,000 Ghana cedi payment to Mr. Kwesi Pratt. They include 15,000 Ghana cedi payment to the NDC party in Hohoi. They include 42,000 Ghana cedi payment to the NDC party to buy 30 motorbikes. They include 100,000 Ghana cedi payment to Koku Ayidoho. They include a 30,000 Ghana cedi payment to renovate NDC party office on 29th March 2011. They include a 13,000 Ghana cedi payment to Kufuor who again on 1st May 2011. They include a 30,000 Ghana cedi payment on 8th February 2011 to Mr. Adekoka. So clearly, the monies that Woyome received those monies and made huge payments out of it to NDC couples. The judge on the Supreme Court case 2 years ago said that this clearly was create, loot, and share. This is the evidence that indeed the only way you can understand corruption as exemplified by the Woyome payments, the only way you can understand it is that this is plain-faced stealing of taxpayers' monies. And as soon as he got the monies, look at the huge payments that he made to the NDC party and people connected with the NDC. And all the evidence are here. We have the stops, all the check stops are here. These are the stops. These are other stops showing the evidence of the payments that were recorded. We also have some of the actual checks that were drawn. The 13,000 is here. The 15,000 is here. The 30,000 is here. The 100,000 is here. I could go on and on. Loads of evidence. Of course, we know that a lot more people receive monies from Woyome, but because we don't have the direct evidence in terms of the checks and the check stops, we would hold on for now. But the ones that we are giving to you are the ones that we have the evidence. We have the stops, and we have the copies of the checks, and we have the records that Mr. Woyome kept of those payments. So, ladies and gentlemen, clearly, President Mahama cannot fight corruption. The NDC government cannot fight corruption. The government and the party is deeply soaked in corruption. It is systemic, and corruption is bleeding this country. Like I said, the GDA payments alone of $100 million could have built 3 factories the size of Commander and should have provided at least 21,000 real jobs. It's all gone through corruption. So it's an unfortunate situation that we are faced with. Like I said, there are many on the list of payments, but we haven't gotten the direct evidence, so we'll hold on to it now. It is very clear that the public purse cannot be safe under the NDC and President Mahama. Thankfully, after 8 long years of this great loot and share, in a couple of hours, the people of this country would have a chance to take their monies back, to reclaim their monies, to stop the creating and the looting and the sharing. We must vote for change. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Now we will take a few questions. We have all of this evidence. We'll make copies for you. I don't know if they are finished, but you get copies so you can. And then we'll take. But we haven't finished. We are going to do questions. Or you don't want the questions? Yes. If you have a question, please raise your hand and then. Yes, sir. Identify yourself and then let's go.
My name is Duka. I work with CTFM. 2 questions. You first made the allegation that the president spoke about some reforms to the serious force. We know that in its shape and form, we don't have the SFO again. There is Yoko, which is supposed to be carrying out their duties. Is this not in any way fulfillment of what you had said previously? And then number 2, you are giving us details of Woyome's supposed check where he paid money to the NBC operative and parachick and the rest. We are yet to examine the exhibits and the details that you have. But would it make this story much more believable if we know how these things were acquired?
What things were acquired?
The exhibits and other things.
When you do your stories, do you tell us your sources? But yes, my brother is saying that something has been done about the Serious Fraud Office. Okay, let me quote exactly to you what they said they would do to the Serious Fraud Office. Yeah.
He says something.
Yeah. I'm going to read. Where is it? Yeah, there it is. Now, let me read it back to you. Mr. Mahama said the fight against corruption required strong political will and commitment of leadership, saying that no legislation could help to end the canker without official commitment to deal with the problem. In this direction, the NDC government will change the serious fraud into an independent commission and will also empower SHRAG to initiate and investigate corruption on its own. Has this been done? This hasn't been done. The Serious Fraud Office has not been changed into an independent commission. And more importantly, he said he will set up the office of the special, he called it Office of the Special Prosecutor, who will be independent of the, he said, okay, Mr. Mahama, whose speech, this was the launch of the NDC manifesto, October 6, 2008. He said, the report said, and this is from Daily Graphic, October 6. He said, Mr. Mahama, whose speech was interspersed with chants of Obama, described corruption as one of the major constraints of the nation's development, and said as part of the moves to fight corruption, the NDC will establish the Office of Independent Fraud Investigator, which will be independent of the Attorney General's office and the Ministry of Justice, but will have powers to initiate prosecution on its own. 8 years. 8 good years. Zilch. So the things that you yourself, you said you would do, the things that you yourself, you said you would do, amending the laws, you haven't been able to do it. And then we have seen the effects. The effect has been the Wayomes and the Jidas and the Sadas and the Smarties and the Watervilles and all the rest of them. You see? Yes?
One quick thing. If you want to know exactly what they're about, you only have to look at what the demise of citizen vigilante Amidu. When he actually tried to enforce the law, what happened to him? They fired him. So that tells you right there that there was never the will to fight corruption in the first place.